This is part 2 of the magnetic reversal process. We will be looking at the evidence dealing with the planetary system. The planetary system is extremely important to understand the magnetic reversal process. In this video, the channel is going to present evidence. Also evidence in part 3. The reason I want the people who are watching and listening and paying attention to this video to give you as much evidence as possible so you can make your own decision if or if not it exists, if or if not it has anything to do with the magnetic reversal process. Also, part 3 will be looking at the evidence again, but also we will be looking at 3 different degrees, 180, 90, and 12 degrees, dealing with the alignment of the planetary system with planet Earth. It will go into detail about the history related to the planetary system. As you know, it's called Planet Wormwood in the Bible, Planet X, Planet of the Crossing, the Great Destroyer, the Great Dragon. But we're going to begin with Dr. Robert Harrington's information. We're going to go through some websites and some pages. There is a number of articles on Dr. Robert Harrington. I will have the links, all of the links related to this video will be in the description box. Dr. Robert Harrington, when I found out about him about 17 years ago actually, and when I started researching the planetary system, I told myself basically, I have to have evidence. This is some type of conspiracy theory, okay? Theory, understand. Conspiracy theory is just what it is. If it cannot be validated or proven, it is a conspiracy theory. But if it can have validation evidence, it is no longer a theory. It is a conspiracy. So what's the conspiracy dealing with Dr. Robert Harrington? He was only 50 years old when he died of cancer. 50 years old. And as you go through this article, you will discover a lot of valuable information that you're not going to get on the BoobTube or anywhere else. This video here is the video that was very controversial, because when you are related to extremely sensitive information, before you sign a disclosure agreement, they tap into your phone. Now back then, Dr. Robert Harrington did not have a cell phone. Okay, that came approximately 3 years later. They tapped his hard line. They do that about 6 months in advance to find out who the individual is and who they're connected with and what is their conversation about, the majority. And all of that is recorded. Well, when you sign a disclosure agreement, you cannot release sensitive material. As you can see in this image, he is pointing at the location of the planetary system. Now, before this interview took place, and we're going to watch it here in a moment, he already had 2 strikes against him. In this interview on a film, he actually showed the location. Well, this gave him the third strike. And if you know anything about the disclosure agreement, it depends on the sensitive material that has been released. After the third one, they usually remove you. You are no longer connected with the federal government, and you're going to lose all of your benefits and retirement. If it's sensitive enough, I'm not going to use the word, except for one word, they will delete you. Okay? And this is what happened to Dr. Robert Harrington, because him and Gene Shoemaker, they was talking on the phone after this interview, and they decided to have a presentation in Colorado Springs just 30 days after this interview. It was already planned before he made the interview. So his phone was tapped. There's his third one. Could this be the final one that got him in trouble? It's a possibility. Or this is the third one, and the phone call to Gene Shoemaker was the last one. You know, as they say. 3 strikes, you're out. Did they give Dr. Robert Harrington an extra strike? I don't believe so. I don't. And if you go through this article, it will tell you right here. He talks about the size. The potential size, the orbit matched very closely with Sitchin's work. And if you don't know who Zecharia Sitchin is, he was the first individual. There's 3, but he was one of the first that was able to translate the Sumerian tablets. And I studied the Sumerian tablets for over 4 years. I only believe 80% of it. Why? 20% cannot be translated correctly. And because of that, there's no validation to the 20%. And that's why I only believe 20%. That's why I only believe 80%. Here, it talks about the interview turns very controversial. Right here it states, 28 months later, after this television interview, Dr. Robert Harrington had died at the age of 50 of a fast-moving cancer, pancreatic cancer. Well, read this next part. Many in the paranormal community have claimed for years that his death was mysteriously, and had even claimed a kind of remote foul play was involved. Even some claimed the interview with Sitchin condemned him because he was leading scientific evidence of Neberu. I received information from his wife, okay, and I will give that to you in just a few minutes. In this part of the article, the question is, why would anyone want to kill a respected astronomer for talking about an author dismissed by mainstream? Well, let me explain something. This was the time that the term was coming out, conspiracy theory. And if you don't know where that term came from, it came from George Bush Sr. He was the head of the CIA. And that's where it came from. So later on it states this right here. Why has the most important astronomer discovered modern astronomy silenced by the mainstream media and science for 35 years? Well, that's very simple. They don't want people to know. They don't want anyone to know. And they don't want you to know. Basically, they want you to continue to pay your taxes so they can build more underground facilities. That's right. And they're not going to release this at all. But there's going to come a time, from what I was told, by the end, or somewhere in the middle of 2022, you're going to be able to see it with an infrared telescope, not related to the federal government. And we are going to get into Skyview. If you don't know what Skyview is, it was a group of astronomers that put their money together and came up with their own infrared telescope. And they was releasing information on YouTube and basically never had audio. Now check this out. Never had audio. When they put the image up there that they captured with the infrared telescope, it just said, "What do you think it is?" Well, after so many strikes, the website went down, the videos went down, and no one knows what happened to them. No one. They became missing. They had 2 locations, one in North America and one in South America, and no one knows what happened to them. Now, for those who are not familiar with Dr. Robert Harrington, he was the chief astronomer for the United States Navy. They thought that he was so important that the federal government built him a observatory in New Zealand. At the time, there was no telescopes in the Antarctic. The Antarctic is the perfect place for an infrared telescope because it's coming in at a 30-degree elliptical orbit. But back then, there was no infrared telescopes in the Antarctic. That came years later. So, what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that sensitive material like this, coming from government employees, according to them, cannot be released to the public. And people don't know that Dr. Robert Harrington, he believed, as well as Gene Shoemaker, that the people on planet Earth should prepare, that this object is coming and it will be here. He devoted his life to finding out the answer dealing with astronomy. And this was the greatest discovery, and he proved it with validation evidence on a film without written permission from the federal government. This article right here goes in detail, and it talks about Pioneer 10, Pioneer 11, Voyager 1 and 2. Now, for those who are into this subject, knows that NASA has two different divisions. The first division of NASA was in the 50s, 1952, but later they changed it and said 56, changed it to 58. Why did they do that? Why? Very simple. They want confusion, right? The civilian side of NASA came about in 1962. So there's two civilian sides. Let me give you an example. The Hubble telescope. That was launched years before NASA civilian side released their Hubble telescope. So there's two. One is military, pointing out at 30 degrees. What do you think it's pointing at? The other one? Oh, it checks out quasars and supernovas and black holes and newborn stars and the Milky Way galaxy. Now you understand my point. There's two agencies. Both of them is never a straight answer. Both of them. Now, what's interesting about all of this is that we are going to listen to an interview of an individual that was connected with the CIA that had access to the telescope, infrared. From what I understand, he only made one interview, and he talks about it. But something happened. The FCC, the Federal Communication, cut the interview off, cut him off. And then after that, he disappeared. Did he disappear on his own? Maybe. We don't know. I've done a lot of research, and you can't hardly even find his name. I couldn't find his name. People said, yeah, his name is so-and-so. Well, I went to go find it, and I didn't find any information on him, so-and-so. But he came up missing. No one has seen him since. And we're going to listen to the interview. So I'm going to take you a little bit through here, slowly. This link will be in the description box. Oh, who is this guy? Mike Brown, Caltech. Okay, I'm going to give you a second opinion. We're going to listen to Mr. Brown, an individual that receives a grant because he works for Caltech that receives the grants from the federal government. So his paycheck is basically a grant. That's what it is. It's a grant. So we're going to listen to him about this. The ninth planet. Let me explain something. Planet X, that term is used by NASA. That means they are looking for a planet that is unknown. Planet X. Well, conspiracy theories, they took that term Planet X and applied it to the planetary system. Because we have 9 planets. That makes it 10. The Roman numeral, 10. Okay? That's where that came from. So, let's move on. I don't want to talk about this guy right now. We got a lot to cover. Okay? A lot. But this article is very good. And it will be in the description box. This link also will be in the description box, and it's from the Earth's Chronicles, Zachariah section, and his interview with Dr. Robert Harrington. It also has a brief summary of when it was first found related to Pluto, a satellite moon that they're calling it now. It was supposed to be a planet, but they changed it. But the article will be in the description box, and this is the mathematic formula that he was using, and it's a very good article. I highly recommend it, that you read it when you have time. But like I stated, the link will be in the description box. Now we're going to listen to the interview with Dr. Robert Harrington, Zachariah section.
Maybe you wish to tell us in a few minutes the nature of those discoveries.
I'd be happy to, and you're absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, the date on here, I was just noticing, is 14 August 1978, which was just about 6 weeks after we discovered the fact that Pluto has a satellite. Once you have a satellite for a planet, you can determine how heavy it is. It turns out Pluto was very much smaller and lighter weight than we had thought, which meant that Pluto has no influence, no appreciable influence on the motions of the planets Uranus and Neptune. At that point, we voiced a hypothesis that this means that there is at least one yet to be discovered planet in the outer reaches of the solar system, and this naturally led directly to you and your interest in what we're doing, and that's when you sent me this book.
You have then postulated the existence or the appearance in some time eons ago of a celestial body which you, I think, named in that paper an intruder.
Yes.
Which may have collided with or somehow turned on their side both Uranus and Pluto.
It did a lot more than that, as a matter of fact. In that paper, we hypothesized that this intruder passed very close to Neptune, that it dislodged one of what we then think were many satellites of Neptune, and one of them became the planet Pluto. We actually think Pluto is an escaped satellite of Neptune. This will also take the orbit of Triton, the big satellite of Neptune, and reverse it. We'll take the orbit of the satellite Nereid and extend it outwards. We can produce all of the observed aspects of the satellite system of Neptune plus Pluto's orbit just with this one single intruding planet. One of the things we did in 1978, having made this prediction that there was an additional planet, 10th or 12th, depending on your point of view, but it's the next one, we sort of put our money where our mouth was, as it were, and we went out and we started looking for this thing. We've been searching for 12 years for this thing. We've been able to refine the search area somewhat, get it rather narrowed down. We do our predictions based on the observed anomalies in Uranus and Neptune. We actually are currently looking down in the region of Centaurus, which is just south of the constellation Libra, but very close to the area that you've talked about.
I think, Dr. Harrington, you have a pretty good picture, at least in your own mind, of what we are talking about, a big planet, a small planet.
Well, if it is in the kind of orbit that we describe here, it would have to be a planet that would have a mass something like 3 to 5 times the mass of the Earth. This would put it intermediate between the gaseous planets like Uranus and Neptune and the terrestrial planets that we have in the inner part of the solar system. So if this planet turns out to be in a 3,600-year orbit, then its mass will be correspondingly larger. But we're talking about something that's a perfectly reasonable kind of planet. It looks like a good, nice planet, small enough that it's not going to be completely enveloped in gas, so it's perfectly capable of supporting life forms of one kind or another. This one here is a map of the solar system as we know it. The inner planets, this is the orbit of planet Pluto. And this here is the orbit that I have proposed for the 10th planet, and here's where we think it is right about now in its orbit. This is your orbit for the planet,
Yes.
and showing that it would come out of Sagittarius in biblical time, and that once you allow for precession, it would be around into Libra by now, and, which is, again, approximately the area that we're looking in.
If Planet X exists, we are not alone in this solar system.
Astronomers are so sure of the 10th planet, they think there is nothing left but to name it. Alone he stretches out the heavens and treads upon the farthest deep. He arrives at the Great Bear, Orion and Sirius, and the constellations of the south. He smiles his face upon Taurus and Aries. From Taurus to Sagittarius.
Well, the video was cut because Zachariah Sitchin died a few years ago, and his family is arguing over the rights of that production. The planetary system, I received information from a very reliable source that it comes into our solar system every 3,657 years. As you heard, 3,600. And we're currently at 3,653. Do the math, 2024. It's truly sad. I've done a lot of research on him. He had a beautiful daughter and a wonderful wife, and I received information directly from her. And this is what I was told. That every Friday night, Dr. Robert Harrington and his wife would go to a seafood restaurant in New Zealand. And when they walked in, they noticed that the hostess, the so-called manager, the waitresses, and she could see the chefs that was cooking from a distance. It was an area that was open so you can watch them prepare the food. But what she noticed later, she said, we didn't recognize none of them. And we thought that was kind of strange. And then when we sat down to order, Dr. Robert Harrington orders the same seafood scallop gumbo. Every time he goes there, his wife said he always orders the same dish. And when they brought the dish, he took a bite, and he told his wife it tasted bitter. And she said, Robert, order something else. And he said, no, I'll skip lunch today, and it'll be okay. It wasn't okay, ladies and gentlemen. He became extremely sick that evening, and the very next day they had to go to the ER, and they submitted him into the hospital, and 2 weeks later he died from pancreatic cancer, from his throat all the way to his rectum. Sad. Well, guess what happened? They broke into his laboratory, stowed his files and his computer. And within the next year, 10 of his associates died. Now, I told you about Gene Shoemaker. If you don't know who he is, you should research him. Him and Dr. Robert Harrington was very close friends, if not best friends. And shortly after Dr. Robert Harrington's death, Gene Shoemaker was in Australia going to look at an asteroid impact site when a truck in the outback carrying 3 trailers slammed into the back of his car at approximately 85 miles an hour, and he rolled over and he was killed instantaneously. Well, they broke into his laboratory, took his files, took his computer, and burned his laboratory down to the ground. And within 1 year, 10 of his associates died as well. Later on, NASA made an appointment to talk with his wife and received permission for his ashes. He was cremated because they wanted to send him to the moon. And she thought that was a wonderful idea. Well, they sent his cremation ashes to the moon, and that was a sign when all of the astronomers stopped talking about this planetary system. And they built the infrared satellite in the Antarctic, and over 125 people have died since that facility was operated and opened. It's amazing. They just don't want us to understand what is about to take place. Everything's okay. Go back to work and pay your taxes so we can continue to build underground facilities. So let's move on. We're going to listen to an interview that was interrupted, cut off by the FCC of the United States government.
Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, look, it says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone. And this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it. And I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. But I believe that instead of having dirt on it like our planet does and water, I think this thing is just a big, bright reddish-orange iron ball, because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. When we saw it, at first, it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years, as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street, and we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us, even though it does say it will in the Bible, leastwise it does in my Bible. It says we can expect all kinds of problems. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near the, that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. And as you go back into the tail, you get into meteorites that go back for millions of miles in the tail. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. I guarantee you there's trillions of meteorites following this thing. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will. and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field tail and be pelted with meteorites. And of course in the Bible it says they will, a talon 70 pounds. So if you've got 70-pound meteorites falling like hail, and I can guarantee you they will be falling like hail because there are that many in the tail of this thing. This thing has got a tail loaded with trash. I mean, it's incredible the amount of stuff that's in this thing's tail. And we're going to go right through that tail, and if it doesn't beat everything on the surface of the ground into a flat putty, I don't know what it'll take. I tell everybody, you better be at least 20, 30, 40, 50 feet on the ground and have either concrete or stone above you, because it'll break through the roof or whatever you've got if you don't. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star, brown dwarf, or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it, and until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud. But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot. I mean, to tell how hot it is, I was told that they estimated between 5 and 10 million degrees, but, you know, I don't really know, if that's right or not. I mean, it's got to be pretty hot because it's sending all of this red iron oxide dust out into space around it.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side, and then as it starts to climb out and go away from us, listen, I was told that this thing's magnetic field is going to be so strong, anybody that does not have a padded lead helmet to wear will have their brain gutted for everything they ever knew, and they'll be a complete raving moron after this thing passes. They'll they won't know, they'll pee in their pants. They won't have a clue what's going on, because this thing will gut their brain. And you know, I was reading a deal in my Bible. It says that after this happens, that nobody will care because they won't be able to remember it. Well, of course, I was told by somebody the reason that is because the electromagnetic field from this thing will be so strong, because, see, as it comes up underneath of us, it's going to start and pull us toward it. And then, just like a pair of big magnets, all of a sudden it's going to lock onto us. And when it does, it's going to be like the Jolly Green Giant hit the earth in the ass. It's going to send a jolt 500 to 1,000 foot high. This is what I'm told. 500 to 1,000 foot high shock waves all the way around planet Earth. They'll be so bad that in a lot of areas that don't have good solid soil, it'll fluff it so badly that you'll practically be like you're standing in quicksand. and that this thing's magnetic field will literally gut your brain of everything. And so you may want to give some thoughts to getting you some sheet lead, build you a little lead helmet to wear, like a little motorcycle helmet to protect your entire brain and the back of your neck, so that way this can't happen. Because if these guys are right about this, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I know for a fact they know what they're talking about when they say stuff. And and it does sound reasonable to me, knowing what I do about electromagnetic energy, that this could happen. And it very easily could gut everybody's brain for everything they ever knew, and they'll stand there and pee in their pants and go, gee, what was that? And that's if they still know how to talk. And there won't be any doubt in anybody's mind, because this thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, and that's what we've seen. So, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now, but that's just my general feeling that and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. I mean, I've been doing everything I could do to get prepared for it. I'm really worried about what Jesus says. When the fig tree is putting on its leaves, know that summer is near, and I'm at your door. And that worries me more than probably anything I've read in the Bible about this whole thing, the parable of the fig tree, because everything seems to be in place for this thing's arrival. And the bad thing is, he says, I'm going to come like a thief in the night. Well, it does also say in the Bible that I'm going to make the sun go down at noontime in Jerusalem. Okay, if that's the case, there's only one thing that'll make the sun go down, not hit the horizon, go down at noontime, and that's if the planet experiences a pole shift.
Okay, I got a quick question that you can probably answer really quickly and then continue from the chat room. Wants to know if you're talking about Planet X or Elenin, and I don't think, I've never thought Elenin is Planet X. Terrell's pretty stuck on that, but I think Elenin is a result of it. It's a comet that's been kicked in.
Elenin is extinction level event, Nibiru is near.
Right.
Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay, because listen, they've known about this thing forever, and I mean they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. We do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion. But, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. This thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. I think the NASA timeline is completely off. I think this thing is going to arrive much earlier than they say it is, but, if you look at now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at, and the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the 6th seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some real serious problems with wind and water. We should be preparing to expect this thing to show up any time.
Well, that's the part that he was cut off by the FCC. The federal government cut him off. No one knows what happened to him after that interview, because he was releasing very sensitive material from the Hubble telescope. We don't know what happened to him. I tried to find more information on the individual. There is none. Just like Dr. Robert Harrington, Gene Shoemaker, risking their lives so we can be prepared and be warned. They believed that these people on planet Earth should be aware that these events are coming. And you heard him state about the magnetic reversal process. It's connected. Go back to work and pay your taxes so we can build more underground facilities. And guess what? You're not invited. Neither is your children. It's truly sad. The next part of this video, we will be looking at 2 clips, one from CNN, the other from CBS, and you can't find them. People had to record them on their phone, and they're deleted now. Also, we're going to listen to a second opinion from Mike Brown from Caltech. And remember what I stated. He gets paid from a grant from the federal government. And he's very disrespectful and have no respect for Dr. Robert Harrington, who was a senior astronomer for the United States Navy, dealing with the planetary system. So here we go.
You to vote on the news, and here's the winner. There's a huge, hidden, heavenly body right here in our solar system. Evidence is mounting that either a brown dwarf star or a gas giant planet is lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system, far beyond the planet Pluto. According to the British newspaper The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter. Experts say the presence of such a massive object could explain why a barrage of comets has been coming from that direction.
Our solar system, for the first time in 170 years, evidence of this 9th planet was found on the far edge of the system. Astronomers at the California Institute of Technology have not directly seen it yet, but they think it's up to 10 times bigger than Earth and 20 times farther away than Neptune. Derek Pitts is chief astronomer and director of the Phelps Planetarium at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. We're pleased to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So how exciting is this to the world of astronomy?
Well, this is extraordinarily exciting. It's exciting because for the first time, and as you said, a very long time, we're identifying another planet in our solar system. It's sort of like an indication that we really don't know everything there is to know about our solar system, and there's lots more to learn.
What's the evidence that it's there?
So the evidence is that we can look at objects orbiting around our solar system and figure out why their motions are the way they are, because of the gravitational influences of everything else around. So we looked at a small group of objects newly discovered and realized we couldn't actually completely understand their motion. However, if we insert into the equation about that an object about the size of this planet 9, everything then worked out.
Planetary science is the study of all things planets. Everything that happens inside a planet, the planetary motion around its host star, even to some extent what inhabits the surface. My sub-discipline within the broader umbrella of planetary science is kind of astrophysics, so the study of planetary orbits, how do they interact with each other, how do planetary systems form and evolve. My name is Konstantin Batigan, Assistant Professor of Planetary Science at Caltech. And I'm perhaps most widely known for the Planet 9 hypothesis, the idea and the kind of theoretical calculations that essentially prove the existence of an additional massive body that orbits the Sun on a much more elongated and extended orbit than the typical planets of our solar system. Planet 9 is a planet about 10 times more massive than the Earth itself that resides so far from the Sun. It still orbits the Sun, but its orbit is so big that it takes 20,000 years to go around. We have legitimate data to really support the notion that indeed there are patterns that can only be explained by the existence of an additional planet. If you go to the outer reaches of the solar system, the most distant orbits that we know of, they all swing out into the same overall direction. And that's telling us something, that there is a gravitational pull that is acting to sort of shepherd these little bodies that we observe. The question then is, where is this gravitational pull coming from? And using relatively sophisticated mathematical models of the solar system's evolution, right, the gravitational pulls among all of these bodies, we can demonstrate that this clustering of orbits, this alignment of the distant bodies, is indicative of the existence of an additional planet in the solar system. And using their orbits, we can calculate the orbit of the planet. Planet 9 is exceptionally dim. Backyard telescopes, no matter how big, cannot spot Planet 9. It is what we call technically a magnitude 24 star, which is just astronomy talk for really dim. So we need the largest telescopes on Earth, even to just spot some of the light that's been reflected off of its surface back onto the Earth.
Planet 9 is they're looking for something that's also perturbing our outer planets, but it has a large orbit that's outside our present solar system. Well, that's not what I'm looking at, and that's not what's been misrecorded. We have another smaller body with a much smaller orbit, that's roughly about 90 to 94 astronomical units out. We're looking at two different objects.
Well, there you have it. You have the evidence from Dr. Robert Harrington, who was deleted. Sad but true. Also, you saw the videos of the CNN, CBS, but also the NASA Insiders speaks out. What happened to him? So, part 3. We'll be looking at additional evidence. I have to find some extremely rare video footages that is difficult to come by, and it's going to take me a few days if I can find them. Also, we are going to get into those who are going to try to survive. Also, I'm going to release some information that I received from a source that they are preparing to build these submergible ships. That means they are not submarines. They are simply ships that can turn 180 degrees, and then because of the weight and the ballast, it can flip back up, right side up. And you're going to find that very interesting. I'm sure you. So the parts of the series are going to change. If I have to put additional information up, I will. If I have to put additional evidence up, I will. If I have to put information in from a very reliable source, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do everything I can possibly do so people who come through this channel can look at the evidence for themselves. And if they don't want to believe, that's fine. And if they want to leave a sarcastic and very disrespectful post, should I say, towards me, towards the subscribers, towards this channel, they will be blocked immediately. I'm not going to tolerate stupidity and ignorance, as well as someone presenting themselves in an unprofessional manner on this channel. It simply will not happen. But I hope everyone received this information. I hope everyone took time to go to the pages, the websites, because this is very important. We might not be able to survive this, ladies and gentlemen. And if that's not enough, the rocks are coming related to the planetary system. They're coming. And we're going to get hit with the debris field. But I love you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Please continue in prayer and be strong. Much love, everyone, and God bless always.